listening to Not So Live from Asteroid G, the podcast that burns when put in direct sunlight. I'm your host, Mike Finkelstein. With me, as always, is...
The Ghoul Mike Buddy, talking horror again right now.
The Crypt Keeper! When it comes to actual horror, I feel the need to say that, you know?
Yes.
So this week we are going to be talking about Dracula. Technically Draculas, but we're not doing that because we're calling all vampires Draculas. It's because we're actually going to be looking at the various people who have played Dracula, or some of the good ones, and decide who we think is probably the best. Now, there are more productions of goddamn fucking Dracula than we could ever possibly cover in this podcast.
It's very daunting to look at this list right here.
No, hundreds upon hundreds of versions of Dracula, with more coming out every year. Hell, we had 2 versions of Dracula from Universal Pictures this year. So, we're not going to be able to get through all of it, but we are going to talk about some of the more famous ones. Some of the more abominable ones that were just terrible, and try and just analyze this. And so that means that if we're going to talk about Dracula, we technically need to go back to a character that isn't Dracula, but is. And that would be the Nosferatu, Count Orlok with Klaus Kinski.
Yeah, I think a really good original incarnation of Dracula brought to the screen. Creepy. Yes. I mean, the teeth are not like what we know as Dracula kind of being, looking like today, but I mean, just very just ghoulish and gross.
Yeah, it's a very interesting take on how the vampire is supposed to look. Very much looking like it comes out of folklore. Different from the suave opera coat wearing Dracula that we knew from Universal Pictures, which clearly they did in part to try and stand apart from this movie that came out 9 years earlier. It's not an easy movie to watch at this point if you're not a fan of really old cinema, because it is a silent movie with the talkie cards and everything in the middle of it. You have to really want to watch this movie to watch this movie. It's rewarding in itself because it's a breezy film. It's an hour or so. It's not that long. And the performance of the lead Dracula is great. Kinski is amazing in the role. And there's some fun techniques there in filming, like the way that he dies in the sunlight at the end, and they just kind of crossfade him out. I love that. But I can't recommend this one for anyone. It's a great Dracula. It's a hard movie to watch.
You really, like you said, got to be into just the real bones of cinema to get through something like this, and that's fine if that's your thing. And it's a good movie for what it is. And there's really some iconic shots that you would know if you see some really old shots of this movie. Oh yeah, I know what that scene looks like. So it's out there and it's in media even to this day. But it is a bit of a difficult watch if you're trying to sit through it.
Yep, it really is. It absolutely is. It is amusing that they reference it in Interview with the Vampire, the TV show that just came out, which, by the way, not a Dracula film, but it's a really good TV show. You should watch it. Very gay. So gay. So fantastically gay, and I don't hold that against it. I think that's actually great. Because the books were pretty gay, at least in the subtext and then eventually in the text. Great TV show. First season is out. 8 episodes, gets to the midpoint of the book. The next season's going to finish it. Hard recommend. Love vampires. But they actually make fun of it because the 3 vampires on the show watch this in the theater, and they're just laughing so hard at it because, different kind of vampire. That does lead us to the Universal movies, of which the iconic one is Bela Lugosi.
Yes.
And I know people love this one. I know people love Bela Lugosi's Dracula. I am not one of those fans.
It's classic, I guess is what I'd say.
It is. What I always say, and I'm going to say it now, but what I always say is I appreciate what they were trying to do, and I appreciate how much Bela is in the role. He is iconic as that Dracula. He is far better than the Dracula they hired for the Spanish language version that was filmed at the same time on the same sets with the same costuming. That stars Carlos, and I'm gonna butcher this. I'm sorry.
Carlos Villarias, I believe.
Villarias, thank you. Yeah. The double L is fucking with my brain, even though I know how it's supposed to be pronounced. So yeah, that movie is so much better than the English language version. The English language version is filmed like they're doing static shots on a stage play, and the Spanish language version, if you haven't seen it, is cinematic. They move the camera, they do flowing shots. Most of the actors are phenomenal. Villara's is a creepy uncle. He's not great in that role. He's like I don't think he's got bad presence, but the way they do shots and the face he makes when he's being Dracula, it's creepy uncle vibes. It's not great. That movie is phenomenal, but Bela Lugosi definitely has the look that people expect.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of like that standard of when you picture Dracula, like that's what your mind goes to. If you kind of like know that is like classic Dracula. I mean, I could see you go into other areas of like Bram Stoker's Dracula, maybe in the vision you have. But Bela for me also is what I see when I see Dracula. Maybe not this movie, but this face.
Yeah, he owned it for what it was. They kept bringing him back in other things for other performances, and then he was hired to play vampires and other things. And he's good. He's good. He could never escape the role, but he's good for what it is. But the movie around him fails him. But of the Universal ones, he's still the best of them because they hired other people to play the role. Lon Chaney Jr., who just looks goofy as Dracula and Son of Dracula, and who was it? John Carradine as Dracula and House of Dracula. Like, the other guys could not hold a candle to what Bela was able to do for those movies. So, have you seen the Hammer ones at all?
I have not. Educate me a little bit.
Christopher Lee is Dracula? You haven't seen... Come on!
No, I don't think so.
Oh my god. You, sir, are missing out. There are 7 movies in that series. 2 of them are really good.
Perfect. Break it down for me.
Okay, in fairness, the Dracula from 1958, which in America tends to be called Horror of Dracula, that name comes from the fact that the actual 1931 Dracula was still often playing in theaters, and they wanted to differentiate it. Christopher Lee is a presence in that film. He doesn't say a lot past the first 15 minutes. And he, whenever he appears after that, he's got, that vampire face with the red contacts that they put in to make his eyes look bloodshot. But the dude was, 6'4", and, you've seen him in other things. He has presence.
Okay, I have seen 1 or 2 of these. I'm looking him up to see what he looked like. I have, yeah.
He is the Shape before Halloween made the Shape, okay? No. So, Horror of Dracula, or as it's more commonly should be called, Dracula, is there. Dracula has risen from the grave. That one has perhaps one of my favorite posters ever. It's the back of a woman, and you see her neck and some blood leaking down, and it says Dracula has risen from the grave. Obviously, it's just such a good poster. It's so dumb, but I love it. And then the follow-up, Taste the Blood of Dracula, that was also pretty good. And they kind of peter out again after that. So But Christopher Lee is fantastic. You can't not enjoy Christopher Lee. So, what is a Dracula you like?
I mean, if we're talking Draculas I like, let's talk about Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman.
Let's talk about Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. Oh my god. So that is the movie I love to say is a great film if you turn the volume off.
That's a good way to put it. I'm a big Gary Oldman fan. So I like this movie, but it has moments.
Oh my god, there's a lot that doesn't work for me in this film, and some of them are just the performances from Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves. He was miscast. He's great, but he was miscast. But if you turn the volume off and you just watch the movie, the production values are amazing. So just that opening shot where they composite a miniature of a train with him riding in the train, and then the book opening up in front, and all of that is practical effects filmed in such a way that they're filming 3 times on the same frames so that it all just naturally composites without having to do weird CGI or editing. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The work that went into that is phenomenal. The movie is a piece of shit. But
oh boy, yeah.
I'm sorry. I know you like it. Tell me why you like it. Defend the movie because I'm never going to.
I mean, I just feel like Gary Oldman really, I think, just tried in this movie, and he brings a lot to every role he does. And maybe this is more me just being a Gary Oldman simp than anything else. And maybe
actor.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
He's a great actor. He does so many films that I love. I love The Fifth Element with him in it. He's so good. Yes. I love The Professional Leon with him in it. It is so good. But maybe this is me just loving Gary Oldman. I mean, he was in the most recent Batman trilogy too. He was Gordon. He's so good. But that's, again, maybe I'm just Gary Oldman simping.
You're simping, but I'm going to let you simp. It's fine. It's fine. Hopefully we can agree on this one that Dracula 2000 is a terrible movie.
It's bad, man.
It's so bad. It is so bad. And Gerard Butler in there as Judas, who's Dracula. Oh my God. Like, They came out with that at near the end of the movie, and I'm like, my brain is just not in it anymore at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they just took Johnny Lee Miller of fame from Hackers and also Elementary, also a great show, and then just like threw him in there like, hey, you're a great actor. Let's throw you in here and try to see what you can do with Gerard Butler, also a great actor. And I mean, no.
Yeah. Oh my God, it was so bad, so bad. That was pre 300 Gerard Butler, and he didn't have his presence. But, So here's the thing. Dracula 2000 is terrible. Dracula 2 Ascension, which is technically a sequel to it, is actually for a really low budget, Dimension Films direct-to-video movie. Actually a lot of fun.
Really?
Yeah, I like it. So they recast everyone. That like anyone who could carry over from the first movie is recast, which is basically Dracula, because he always comes back.
Right.
And so, like, these two morgue attendants get the burned body of Dracula from the first movie, and they realize he's a vampire, and they decide that they're going to, like, try and bring him back so they can learn the secret of immortality from his blood. But to do that, they have to revive him. And then they're like, okay, he's a vampire. I think I know how to do this. So they use all the vampire folklore against him to try and keep him trapped. They throw this net over him that's, like, all tiny little knots. So, vampires have to untie knots. And they spread like sunflower seeds all around in front of him, thousands of them. Like he'll have to like bend down and count them one by one. He's never going to escape. And so, spoiler, this is a movie from 2003. If you haven't watched it, you're probably never going to. But near the end, he like the entire time through the movie, he's just like slowly fiddling with the knots, just fingering a couple threads, and you're like, what is he doing? And so he reveals himself, and he's like, I can escape at any time. So he pulls one string, and the entire net falls off of him. And they're like, how many? You have to count the seats. He's like 3,240. Just looking them dead in the eye, and they're like, oh my God. So they throw a bag of seeds at him in the air, and he counts them in midair. And you're like, you guys are fucked.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I want to watch this now.
Yeah, it's a really terrible low budget movie, but for what it is, it's fun, and that Dracula is so good. And then they fuck it up in the third one and recast again to Rutger Hauer, who is Rutger Hauer. I mean, he's great, but he's not great as Dracula. So yeah. No, but I liked the second one, and I was so deeply disturbed that I liked the sequel to Dracula 2000.
It's okay. We all have our vices.
My God. Okay, back to a good one. I'm sure you haven't seen it. It seems like I've seen way more classic horror than you have. Have you seen the 1979 Dracula starring Frank Langella?
Perhaps. I'm looking at it now. I know, Donald Pleasance. I don't think I've seen this one, though.
This one's great. This one is really great, and I highly recommend everyone watch it. I think I've recommended on the Halloween movie marathon before that I write for the website every once in a while. This one is both a good Universal adaptation. They were their first remake of their 1931 film. And it has Frank Langella in it, who's both scary and has presence, and there's a bit of sexiness to it. Like, it works on many levels, and it gives you all the Dracula you want.
I love the hair. I mean, I'm drawn to the hair right now. Frank Langella, I feel you, sir.
Yes. Oh, yes, sir. Thank you. No, it's great. I mean, Frank Langella has become something of a pariah in Hollywood lately. He has very bad views on sex and touching in films. He's a dirty old man now. Let's just be blunt about it. I'm not sure he was like this at the time, but he does act like this is how he's just supposed to always be allowed to act. So that puts a bit of a taint on his performance here. But in general, this is a pretty solid adaptation. I do recommend.
Okay, all right.
Give me another one, sir.
It's voice acting, but do we throw Adam Sandler on this list? I mean, he
Oh my
got
god.
several movies.
Hotel Transylvania. I can't get into these. I'm gonna. You have found a series I wasn't able to watch. Congratulations, sir.
I like the first one, the second one, third one. I've seen them because my family likes Halloween, and we throw these, Freeform or ABC Family will always be for me. I'm sorry, on the TV all of October, and this is playing all the time. So I've seen these. I like Adam Sandler. I think he does a fine job as a kid's Dracula. I'll just say that.
um, and I do want to hear your thoughts because we'd mentioned this briefly before we started recording this. How about Leslie Nielsen as Dracula?
I mean, it's one of the better adaptations of Dracula comedy, isn't it?
Oh, it's so not good. I've watched it recently. It's bad. There's a fun sequence where he and is it Mina in that one? They always switch the names back and forth between Mina and Lucy, so it's hard to remember which one the main girl is from Dracula to Dracula. But
right.
Let's just go with Mina. He and Mina are at a ball and they do a dance and like they do it in front of this giant mirror that he doesn't notice, so the entire audience just sees her but not him. That's a funny sequence. There are moments like when Carrie Elways as the rich lord has to like stab Lucy in the chest. And the amount of blood that comes spraying out, and then Von Helsing, played by Mel Brooks, is like, "You need to do it again." He's like, "Really? Really?"
Let's just call it like it is. This is a fun Mel Brooks movie.
It has its moments.
And it has its moments.
It has its moments.
Leslie Nielsen, though, not your best Dracula. He tries. He's got kind of the look, with the gray hair, and he was, very suave. Frank Drebin coming fresh off of, the Loaded Gun movies or whatever.
Naked Gun.
Naked Gun. Thank you. Naked Gun. So, I mean, it's fine if you're a fan of his. But, I mean, it's a cute movie, I guess I'd say.
It's fine. It didn't do anything for me at the time. It was. I watched it again recently, and I'm like, wow, most of this is really bad. But there are legitimately funny moments. But it's no Young Frankenstein.
No.
Frankenstein. It is not up there with High Anxiety or Young Frankenstein or any of those for like.
Even Robin Hood Men in Tights is a better movie than this one.
On YouTube, there's this clip of the bow staff fight that like they do, and as much as most of that movie is really bad. I can't help but every time it shows up on YouTube watching that sequence because it's hilarious.
Oh, it's so good. Like, there's just so many things that, Mel Brooks does in his movies. And we should do a podcast on him, too, because that was great. They're great. But, I mean, this wasn't his best movie, but it's you know what you're getting when you sign up for Mel Brooks. It's just this was on the weaker spectrum of movies he's done.
It was. I mean, but that's the thing. There are so many bad Dracula movies out there. Like, on the spectrum of Mel Brooks, this is one of his worst. On the spectrum of Dracula movies, it's actually not bad in comparison. Like, it is, as far as being terrible is concerned, it's no Dracula 3000, for example, which is...
Oh, boy.
Have you seen that?
I've seen parts of it. It was on, Sci-Fi, and I just couldn't. Couldn't. And I love bad sci-fi movies, but Casper Van Dien couldn't even save this for me.
Dracula
sorry.
in space. Well, and here's the thing. Okay, I don't want to sound crass, but I'm gonna say something that sounds a little crass, but it also kind of shows a weirdness to this movie. Erika Eleniak is in this movie, and she is a porn star. And you put her in a movie and you hire her to act because she doesn't once get naked in the movie. Your priorities are a little whack there, guys. I get you didn't hire her for her tits. That is fine. I mean, it's not Under Siege. Not everyone's hiring her for her tits. That's fine.
Right.
Which is the primary thing she did in Under Siege. Which is a terrible movie. But it's like, if you're gonna hire someone to actually act, don't hire a porn star. She's so bad in this movie.
It's almost like she was getting a favor thrown to her from somebody she knew at the studio. Hey, I can also do this. And they're like, sure. And it's got Coolio in it. And Coolio's done some bad sci-fi horror movies if you didn't know. And this is even bad. He did a movie about dinosaurs that I can watch or whatever. This one I couldn't even get through. The poster of it is kind of creepy, the way Dracula looks, but this is a shitty movie.
It's a shitty movie. We could go over a ton of these. Again, there's hundreds. We're not going to go through all of these. But I do want to touch off in finally for a high note. And I don't know if you've seen this one either. Blackula.
I gotta look at it, but I don't think so.
Okay, well, you would know it. His bite was out of sight. I love that. I love that. You need to go see Blackula. It is so. It starts with Prince Mamuwalde going to Dracula to negotiate some sort of trade deal between his African kingdom and Romania. It's a dumb setup. But Dracula basically is a racist douche. Who captures him, imprisons him after turning him into a vampire with his wife, and then basically leaves him there to feed on his wife, and then sit entombed for 200 years. And then he escapes and gets out into America in the 1970s, and basically has a Dracula story just in the 1970s, and he's black, and it's awesome. This movie is awesome.
I love some of these, like African American black humor movies, like Pootie Tang and Undercover Brother. Like, this feels like, looking at it, that's in a lot of that same vein. So I'm gonna check this one out. This looks funny.
Undercover Brother's a great movie. I'm not gonna debate that. That's a great parody of blaxploitation. This is just a good blaxploitation movie. The sequel, Blackula Scream, wasn't great. Some of the other ones that cropped up in that era to try and do the black horror weren't good. Blackenstein is unwatchable. But some of them are just fun for their names. Blackenstein's a great name. Dr. White and Mr. Black, which is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I feel like they kind of missed out on that one because there was a Hammer movie called Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, and if they'd done Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, that would have been the perfect blaxploitation name. I'm just saying, you know.
That sounds good. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. See, but no, there's some good movies from this one, but Blackula is definitely cream of the crop for blaxploitation, and it's also just a great Dracula adaptation without actually having the Dracula name for most of it. It's tops on my list.
Nice. I'm definitely gonna look into this one. I like this kind of humor, and if it's a good movie at the same time, all the better.
It's a good movie. It's just a good movie. It's not even funny in that. Well, okay, it probably has funny now because some of it is very 1970s, you know.
Right.
But no, I appreciate it just for the sake of it. It's camp, but it's only camp because it's the 1970s and it's 50 years. Wow, it's 50 years old. Damn.
Yeah. Yep. I pause every time I think, I feel like 2003 was still 5 years ago. So.
Yeah, I was watching Time Cop. For the website.
I love Van Damme.
It's such a bad movie, but it's such a gloriously good bad movie. But they're coming in from the future with these really dumb fucking looking cars, and the guy is like, I'm gonna this movie came out in the 90s, and he's like, I'm gonna use this paper from the future to do stock market things in the 1930s, and it's a USA Today from 2004, and I'm like, I'm feeling hideously ancient now.
Oh my god,
so good. Anyway, any other ones that you want to touch upon?
I mean, there are some I guess you can throw on if you want to give a quick Dominic Purcell from Blade Trinity. I mean, Blade Trinity, like we talked about earlier, at some point, I mean, even Ryan Reynolds couldn't save this movie, and him as Dracula, I didn't even know he was supposed to be Dracula until they started calling him that. I just thought he was some really
always find it weird.
Old vampire.
So this is a rant we can end on, but I always find it weird when people are like, we're going to use the name Dracula, but we're going to make it a character that's been alive for thousands of years. And I'm sitting there going, okay, but you guys know that was a real dude, right?
Yeah.
Like when they say Dracula was Judas Iscariot in Dracula 2000, and he knew Jesus, and then he became Dracula. I'm sitting there going, okay, so you've tied it to a guy that you want to say is real, Jesus. We're not going to get into a philosophical debate about that. You're accepting Jesus is real. But then you're saying that Dracula isn't Dracula, that this other guy is Dracula. I'm lost.
It's confusing.
Yeah. So it's like I have that problem with the Castlevania series, and they're like, this other guy became Dracula after one of their first prequels things. And I'm like, but he's the reason he's named Dracula is because he's son of the dragon, Vlad Dracul. Like, guys, you can't just apply the name Dracula to anyone. There's a reason for it. This is a rant I have every time. Yeah.
They're tacking a name onto something just to tack a name onto it at that point.
Yeah, they've lost the historical thing. But it's like, if you're going to name it after a guy, you can't name it after this other guy, too. You want to use the name. I get you want to use the name. Actually use proper history, guys.
I mean, sometimes I feel like, movie studios and writers just try to insult the intelligence of some people and not even
most
think
people probably don't know. Yeah.
But that's the thing. The people that do know can call it out. And, it's it's lazy in a way.
There are few things that I am knowledgeable enough about that I can go off on a really good rant. It's basically graphic design and Dracula. But I'm going to hold firm to Dracula on this, okay?
I'm with you, 100%.
With that, this has been Not So Live from Asteroid G, slinking back into its coffin for another week. I'm your host, Mike Finkelstein.
And I will see you guys later, my pretties.